With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. The NFL and National Football League Players Association are currently involved in negotiations for a new contract ahead of the 2019 regular football season, which kicks off September 5th. Now, a new organization calling itself the International Brotherhood of Professional Running Backs has filed a petition with the Federal Labor Board asking that running backs be severed from the Players Association and formed into a new union. NFL running backs have unique career structures, and the current one-size-fits-all unit is inappropriate, according to a description of the petition filed with the National Labor Relations Board. The NLRB has not yet taken any action on assessing the validity of the petition. McLaren will return to full-time IndyCar competition next season for the first time since 1979 in a partnership with existing team Errol Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Michael Barr.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit? It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is, your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
Are you ready to go where the summer feeling grows? Get into the spirit at Ealing Broadway. Discover the latest fashion with over 70 stores, including River Island, H&M, Primark, JD, Monsoon, and many more. And then join us from the 27th of July for a really wild summer. Enjoy sport on the big screen, get lost in the summer maze, or join in our free interactive storytelling and crafty workshops. Visit Ealing Broadway, where the summer feeling grows. Open until 7 p.m. weekdays. See website for details.
This is a plug. A plug for the future. Inviting you to join the forward-thinking riders, skaters, and drivers who choose electricity to get around. Charging their bikes, boards, and cars using power from EDF Energy, the UK's largest producer of low-carbon electricity. So, do you like the sound of the electric future? Come and join us. Generation Electric. Everyone's welcome. EDF Energy.
Is your laptop slowing you down? Has your tea gone cold while it starts up? Talk to Curry's PC World. You can save between £50 and £200 when you trade in your old qualifying laptop for a thin, light HP Pavilion with speedy startup. Get up to speed in no time. Bring in your old laptop, save with instant trade-in at Curry's PC World. In-store only. See website for laptop trade-in qualifying criteria evaluation. This is getting too fast for you to hear, so I'm going to stop now and get the bus home and have some nice dinner and put the cat out.
London's original pop-up festival is back. Underbelly Festival South Bank, with more must-see shows than ever before. From comedy to cabaret, get your tickets from just £12 each, or simply head on down and hang out in the sunshine by the London Eye. Soak up the electric festival atmosphere at one of London's largest outdoor bars and enjoy the international street food. Open 7 days a week till late. Go to underbellyfestival.com.
A brand new original series for W.
So I am going back to Princess Alexandra Hospital for the second series of delivering babies, and I can't wait.
We're going to have a baby.
You know, you see everything. You see pool births.
Brilliant. That's it. Good. Take a big breath. And go again.
Assisted deliveries.
Well done.
Go on, girl. You can do this. Keep going. Keep going.
Excitement. Sadness.
Emergency team, please go to Labour Ward Theatre.
What makes the ward so special are the people that work there.
Keep it going, as long as you can, as long as you can.
They give and they give, and what they get back is the most amazing thing you will ever witness.
It's got blonde hair. It's got blonde hair. Where's she? Here it is. Look at you.
The award-winning series returns.
Congratulations.
Emma Willis delivering babies. Stars tonight at 10, new and exclusive to W.
Oh, it's not. Oh, it's not. 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 It's not
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio. To New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
From the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin, I'm Matt Miller. This is a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. We are looking at equity indexes across Europe that are rising, although we've seen a bit of a turnaround in the FTSE. It's now showing a red arrow, just down 1/100th%, less than 1 point, but nonetheless, it is off. And we see the IBEX 35 in Spain also falling a little more than 10 points. The CAC and the DAX are still up, but substantially less than they had been earlier in the session. The DAX in Frankfurt now rising 34 points, and the CAC putting up a gain of 5 in Paris. In terms of the risk off, in terms of the safe haven assets, we do see the yen continuing to be bid now at 105.30, so you can buy 105.3 yen for every dollar. The dollar getting stronger now against the euro. Right now, 111.69 is that level, and the chart is fairly dramatic. All these charts are fairly dramatic. The pound's still up just a little, 120.59, but the U.S. 10-year yield is plummeting to 1.7035. So we're seeing a real movement over the last 20 or 30 minutes or so in these markets. Definitely something that we'll continue to keep an eye on for you. That's a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Caroline?
Yeah, very good morning. I'm Caroline Hepker, and it is 9:31 a.m. here in London. So after that markets check, let's talk about some other mind-boggling numbers. $74,000 a minute, $4.5 million an hour, or $107 million a day. That is how quickly the fortune of the Waltons, the family behind Walmart, has been growing over the past year. It places them once again at the top of Bloomberg's annual ranking of the world's richest families. In the time since I started speaking, they have made some $30,000. It's not just the Waltons, though, of course, who have seen their fortunes expand. In all, the world's 25 richest families have added $250 billion to their wealth in the past year. And joining Mamelo and myself is a Bloomberg wealth reporter, Tom Metcalf. Great to have you on the programme, Tom. This is a super well-read story, really good work. What's behind the $250 billion of gains?
Well, it's just a really great time to be rich in the world right now, basically.
Opposed to?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically everything is going in the right direction if you already own capital, and you can really put that to use at very low cost. So, take the Waltons, they've got Walmart. The stock market's been really pushed up, and that's helped by the fact that, they can borrow debt at, sort of record low prices. And also that company in particular has been doing sort of dividend buybacks. That's again also pushed the stock up. But sort of on a much more general position, basically, if you're rich today, it's arguably the best time in history to be rich. And that obviously brings up all sorts of questions about, how fair is that? £30,000 or dollars in the time you were speaking. I think by contrast, a Walmart associate would have made 6 cents. So that's a huge disparity, and whether that's fair or not is something I think a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah, I guess, fairness is in the eye of the beholder to some extent, right? Is there something that's undeniably fair or unfair? I guess that's a bigger philosophical question. But there are people who are getting richer and richer, and who are the additions to this story?
Well, the family that's getting the most attention is the Saudi royal family, who are in at number 4 at about $100 billion. And obviously, that introduction or that new entry is interesting. So it points to the difficulties of sort of passing family wealth, because that fortune in particular is incredibly opaque. And so really for us, it sounds crazy, but that's a $100 billion figure, and that is a baseline figure. It could be as high as $1 trillion, my colleague Devon feels. But yeah, sort of 100 billion is the absolute lowest level of that.
Yeah,
it also brings up the question of fairness, right? I mean, the Waltons haven't been accused of murdering any journalists, so that's
Yeah, and also
another part of the story.
Yeah, the other part of the story, interestingly, is also kind of family, how big the families are, and and who kind of is counted. I thought was sort of fascinating. So you've got the Waltons, obviously top. In terms of some of the big decliners, though, some families have kind of fallen out of the league because actually it's not that easy sometimes even to maintain the family wealth that may have been accumulated, quickly or over sometimes centuries, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is the top of capitalism. So it's, dog eat dog. And what you see is, even families that are enormously rich will sort of fall out of this, very rarefied club of the top 25. So, a couple of big names, the Quant family of BMW fame, they actually fell $8 billion, basically because BMW is just going through very hard times. And then, beyond even that, in Korea, for example, the Lee family, who are behind Samsung, they fell off the list entirely. And also in France, the Tissot family, they again also fell out. So, there is definitely movement, and I guess it's kind of peak capitalism in a way. You sort of see these crazy numbers, and at the same time, you sort of see the cream rise to the top in some ways.
All right, very interesting stuff indeed, Tom. Great story. The wealthiest families in the world, one of the most read of the day, brought to us by Tom Metcalf, Bloomberg Wealth Reporter.
Right, let's cross over now to Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans, who's got all the latest in global news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. In Hong Kong, protests have led the airport to cancel all remaining flights today. Demonstrators jammed the main terminal for a fourth day in a row. Meanwhile, authorities use more aggressive tactics in the 10th straight weekend of protests. Riot police were videotaped beating demonstrators in subway stations, and officers went undercover to infiltrate the group and make arrests. In Argentina, President Mauricio Macri is under pressure after suffering a heavy loss in a key primary election. Bloomberg's Juan Pablo Spenieto reports.
With 88% of ballots counted, Alberto Fernandez, the opposition candidate who has former President Cristina Kirchner as his running mate, had 47% of votes versus 32% for Macri. If that result stands in October, Fernandez will win the presidency outright. Pollsters have long said that Macri will have trouble overcoming defeat by a margin of more than 7 percentage points. In New York, JP Spinetto, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Crossing over to Europe, in Italy, Deputy Premier Matteo Salvini is taking his campaign to the beach. That's after pulling the plug on the fractious coalition government last week and calling for swift elections. The League party leader spoke to Bloomberg exclusively while touring the coastline to drum up support.
I don't think anyone is scared of democracy. We ask for elections. One should be scared if we were saying, I don't want elections. We're not letting the people vote and coming up with strange governments. We just want the people to vote.
Salvini wants a clear majority in parliament without having to rely on allies. That hasn't happened in Italy for over 40 years. And finally, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been accused of rash spending promises. The Institute for Fiscal Studies says it's a little reckless to commit to big funding increases at the same time as promising to cut taxes. It says a combination of those things and Brexit could lead to a big increase in borrowing. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Now, with the morning sports news, here's Colin Besley.
Manchester United boss Ole Gunnar Solskjaer says there's a lot more to come from his team. Marcus Rashford scored twice in a 4-0 thrashing of Chelsea in their Premier League opener at Old Trafford. Elsewhere, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang grabbed the only goal of the game as Arsenal were 1-0 winners at Newcastle. Meanwhile, the video assistant referee ruled out a Wolves goal because of a handball as they played out a goalless draw at Leicester. Rangers kept pace with Scottish Premiership champions Celtic with a 100% start to their league campaign. Striker Jermaine Defoe scored a hat-trick as they eased to a 6-1 victory at Ibrox against 10-man Hibs. England head coach Eddie Jones names his final squad for the upcoming Rugby Union World Cup later. They started their preparations with a convincing 33-19 victory over Wales at Twickenham. Debutant Willie Hines impressed and will hope he did enough to be included in the 31-man group for this autumn's tournament in Japan.
Let's get the American sports from Pete Fox.
Baseball in Toronto, the Yankees scored just one run, which would be all they needed, as Tanaka went 8, allowing just 3 hits. In Boston, the Red Sox fell behind the Angels early, 3-0. They overcame that deficit, even grabbed a lead, but end up falling in 10-5-4, splitting the 4-game set over the weekend. The Orioles, after getting hammered 23-2, turned the page and walked off the Astros in the finale 8-7. The Nationals ended the Mets' 8-game winning streak at Citi Field, 7-4 the final on an Asdrubal Cabrera 2-run double against his former team. A's blanked the White Sox 2-0, and the Giants outlast the Phils 9-6. I'm Pete Fox. That's your Bloomberg NBC Sports Update.
Now, coming up next on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, could the unprecedented strength of the US dollar trigger a recession? We're going to be speaking to Janet Murray, who is global economist at Schroders, about the rising concerns. That's coming up next. Matt, look, Goldman Sachs raising the issue of a US recession because of this trade war intensifying with China.
Yeah, absolutely. Goldman Sachs thinks the likelihood of a U.S. recession is a little higher. And they did cut their outlook for the fourth quarter, but they do still expect growth as the base case scenario. 1.8% is what Goldman Sachs expects from U.S. GDP growth in Q4. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Interactive Brokers' premium technology and automation provides clients with lowest cost access to global markets. Access stocks, options, futures, forex, fixed income, and ETFs on over 120 markets in 31 countries and 23 currencies. Fund your account in multiple currencies and trade assets denominated in multiple currencies from a single account. Learn how Interactive Brokers minimizes your costs to maximize your returns at ibkr.com/YIB.
What would you say about the firm that supports your advisory practice?
I love that I can call in and get expert advice.
I love that you answer the phone and that I'm not a number.
I love the sense of community.
The culture is great and I love the service.
Real quotes from real advisors. In fact, advisors are head over heels about Commonwealth Financial Network, and it shows. J.D. Power has named us highest in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms 5 times in a row. Why so smitten? Maybe because we've been putting relationships first since 1979, starting with our accountability to you and your clients alone. The consistent investments we make to ensure that you have every possible tool, support, and competitive advantage. And the fact that you can trust us to have your back through both good and challenging times. Visit Commonwealth.com and find out what it feels like to be swept off your feet. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor, broker-dealer. For J.D. Power 2018 award information, visit jdpower.com/.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Hemorrhoids. You talk to your GP, but you don't really get anywhere. Because the NHS has limited surgery for hemorrhoids, so you go on suffering in silence. Okay, maybe not so silent. It's time to speak to Xroid. They specialise in a new, fast, safe and effective procedure for hemorrhoids with no downtime. And the procedure takes just 30 minutes or less. Don't be one of the 8 million people in the UK suffering in almost silence. Get back to what you love doing. Xroid. Be kind to your behind. For free advice on hemorrhoids, text KIND to 81156.
There's a low pollen count right now. It may not stay that way. That's cool, providing you've got a Dyson purifying fan. Its sealed filter captures pollen and allergens in your home, while Dyson Core Flow technology quietly channels purified air for you to breathe. right here in your home in London. Reserve and collect your Dyson Purifying Fan today at Curry's PC World.
This summer at Chessington World of Adventures Resort, answer the call of the wild. With over 1,000 of the world's most amazing animals and over 40 of the wildest rides and attractions. Meet the Gruffalo and all your favourite characters at the Gruffalo Summer Party and so much more. Book early and save up to 40% at chessington.com. It's Britain's wildest adventure for all the family.
It had been 22 years since Dan and Tom last met, since they shared a desk in maths and played football together at lunchtime. 22 years with nothing more than a few Christmas cards and an online friend request to show for it. A 21st century eulogy for the loss of a once great friendship. Until a chance meeting outside the corner shop. On a morning, they both decided to ditch the car and walk instead. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
A brand new original series for W.
So I am going back to Princess Alexandra Hospital for the second series of delivering babies, and I can't wait.
We're going to have a baby.
You know, you see everything. You see pool births.
Brilliant. Good. Take a big breath. And go again.
Assisted deliveries.
Well done.
Go on, girl, you can do this. Keep going.
Excitement, sadness.
Emergency team, please go to Labour Ward Theatre.
What makes the ward so special are the people that work there.
Keep it going, as long as you can.
They give and they give, and what they get back is the most amazing thing you will ever witness.
It's got blonde hair. It's got blonde hair. Push it. Here it is. Look at you.
The award-winning series returns.
Congratulations.
Emma Willis delivering babies starts tonight at 10, new and exclusive to W.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters here in London, I'm Caroline Hepker with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So thin trading volumes, European stocks clinging on to a gain on the Euro Stoxx 600, but we're down 0.2% on the FTSE 100. The Xetra DAX up 0.2% as US futures turn negative. The Dow Jones futures down 0.3%, so too S&P 500 E-mini futures. Hong Kong, Chinese officials saying the city was at a critical juncture. There were signs of terrorism. Cathay Pacific shares tumble as Chinese state-run firms tell employees to stop flying on Cathay, Hong Kong's key carrier, I guess, after its employees took part in anti-Beijing protests. The US-China trade war does continue. President Donald Trump saying that the planned trade talks with China could well be called off. In terms of yields in the bond market, we're down 5 basis points on benchmark US 10-year Treasury yields, 1.698%. Italian BTP yields also dropped 5 basis points here in Europe. Plenty of markets are shut, though, for holidays. Singapore, India, Malaysia, Philippines and Thailand, and also Japan. The yen has extended a strong rally, up 0.4% currently. So safe havens bid 105.29, and the yuan nudges lower. Watch out, of course, for the peso. Could lose as much as 25% of its value when we get the peso, which begins trading 2 p.m. London time. That's after a landslide defeat for Macri in a key primary vote in Argentina. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Goins with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. In eastern China, a typhoon has killed at least 32 people and left 16 missing. More than 1 million people were evacuated from Shanghai and a neighbouring province. The typhoon damaged more than 3,000 homes. It's now been downgraded to a tropical storm. Here in the UK, it's claimed criminal gangs are recruiting children into a life of crime by offering them free food. The tactic's been called chicken shop grooming and sees youngsters persuaded to deal drugs. Evidence submitted to MPs who are investigating knife violence in the UK said those excluded from school are particularly vulnerable to exploitation. And finally, wine has overtaken beer as the UK's favourite alcoholic tipple, according to a new survey. 81% of adults say they'd had a drink of wine in the past year. This compares to 71% who enjoyed beer and spirits. The finding comes as the wine industry launches a campaign calling on Chancellor Sajid Javid to stop penalising its 33 million drinkers. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Yan Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Matt.
LAG, thanks very much for that. Now let's get over to John Tucker in New York City. He's getting ready for Bloomberg Daybreak at 7:31 Lex. John, what do you got ahead for us?
Well, we'll look at what's in the driver's seat for markets this morning, Matt. Of course, part of the story, the protests in Hong Kong and the idea that China may intervene. Trade, of course, always on the front burner. U.S. and China escalate their trade war. A slew of global data point to slowing growth. Now, we're going to game the chance of a recession with Conrad de Quatros of RDQ Economics. A shock election result boosting the prospects of a populist leader coming to power in Argentina. Investors warn of panic. And how long has this been going back and forth, Matt? We could soon get official word on a merger between CBS and Viacom. Join myself and Nathan Hager coming up in just a matter of moments.
Looking forward to it. Always great to hear as well from Riding De Quatros Economics. Definitely tune in for that. John Tucker coming up with Nathan Hager on Bloomberg Daybreak out of New York. If you're listening on Sirius XM, if you're listening on London DAB Digital Radio, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
Now, Goldman Sachs is raising concerns about a U.S. recession as that trade war with China intensifies. The U.S. Investment Bank no longer expects a trade deal before the 2020 presidential election. Now, Goldman Sachs lowered its fourth quarter growth forecast by 0.2% to 1.8%. Joining us this morning to discuss this and all the market moves, Janet Murray, global economist at Cazenove Capital. Really good to have you on. Look, a number of people now talking around this recession risk issue. Larry Summers, to name but one, speaking to Bloomberg Television. The recession risk is much higher than it needs to be and much higher than it was 2 months ago. How do you peg recession risk for the US?
So we agree that the risk of a recession has definitely risen given the escalation in the trade tension, because the latest round involves using the Chinese currency as a weapon, and also the China halting the agricultural purchases. And I think the U.S. is going to retaliate and, followed by China. So I think this will significantly impact the already very weak corporate confidence. I mean, a lot of these weaknesses haven't been shown in the data yet, but we think that that poses significant risk to global growth, and we definitely see high risk of a recession. But having said that, in the next 6 months to 12 months, I think the U.S. may just be able to avoid a recession because what we see is still very solid labor market. So we think that that is going to provide cushion to the economy. However, if there is further escalation and further evidence that corporates are holding their capex and hiring, then we'll be more concerned.
Do you think that if there were an agreement on trade between the U.S. and China, that would take the pressure off? I mean, would that lead to a continuation of this expansion, which is already, I think, the longest in history, at least in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think it will provide some relief for sure, because I think trade tension is the biggest concern of the markets for more than a year already. And if there is a deal, then I think corporates would definitely be happy. I think they would not need to, for example, start to fire people because they worry about the global outlook. So I think the global expansion can continue to carry on. I mean, because central banks are still very supportive. And I think even with a deal, the global central banks are not going to start aggressively hiking interest rates, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that it's very hard for global growth to be growing very strongly again, because I think a lot of that confidence is lost, and I think corporates remain quite skeptical on how persistent this still is going to be going forward.
Indeed, and of course China has been slowing, and that is, one key issue. Also, I note that China has made much of this IMF report into yuan manipulation. The IMF sort of saying that it basically looks fairly priced at the moment. So China feels in a strong position. It's sounding very, very strong when it comes to the US-China trade war. They feel justified to fight the trade war.
Well, I think definitely, because I think over the past year or so, China has actually been quite consistent in their approach. They have been very open to trade talks. They have been previously suggesting they want to buy more U.S. agricultural goods, which a lot of U.S. farmers have been having high hopes on, which subsequently being disappointed. However, I think the U.S. approach is kind of more erratic, and so I think China has definitely can hold its ground because it hasn't really been that erratic, and it has really and I think a lot of national pride is being involved as well.
The U.S. would say that China agrees to things in preliminary discussions and then goes back on them, and certainly we see from President Xi even a couple of years ago at Davos making these sort of open market capitalist commitments in theory, but then when it comes to actually letting other companies buy majority stakes in companies in China, or letting other companies take bigger pieces of the market, he backs off. Doesn't the Chinese government still want time before they fully open up?
Yeah, I think I would disagree with that statement, because I think over the past few years or so, China has actually been actively open up their capital account. We have seen, for example, they increase the percentage that the foreign companies can participate in the financial services company, and they actually move the cap to just 100% for insurance companies, for example. And also over the past year, they have opened up the Asia market. They have started the Star Board, which encourages more technology company to list, and I really think that China is making an effort to allow more foreign participation. However, I think you have to acknowledge that it takes time for China to fully open up. However, I think China is definitely taking steps.
Okay, taking steps. And just one other note then on the PBOC. I thought this was quite interesting that the Bank of China is, quote, close to issuing its own cryptocurrency. The PBOC obviously, trying to hold the currency very steady in terms of the yuan, that is.
Oh yeah, I think in terms of the yuan, I think they allowed it to depreciate past the 7 mark, and I think that really opens the floodgate. I personally think that Chinese yuan will continue to depreciate, but in a well-managed manner. I can't comment too much on the cryptocurrency front.
How cool would that be, though? I mean, that would be so sweet if they had their own cryptocurrency with a blockchain basis, and then people started using that. That could push the yuan to the world reserve currency. I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
Yeah, you are, perhaps.
Anyway, Janet, it was great having you with us this morning. Janet Mui is a global economist at Schroeder, and a real pleasure to spend some time with you, Janet Mui, there with us here on Bloomberg Radio.
Now, coming up next on Bloomberg at Daybreak, it'll be Daybreak Live from New York with Nathan Hager and John Tucker, taking you on through the US market open. I'll just leave you with a check of the Euro Stock 600 flat right now, 5100 dips 0.2%. This is Bloomberg.
Are you hemorrhoids? You talk to your GP, but you don't really get anywhere. Because the NHS has limited surgery for hemorrhoids, so you go on suffering in silence. Okay, maybe not so silent. It's time to speak to Xroid. They specialise in a new, fast, safe and effective procedure for hemorrhoids with no downtime, and the procedure takes just 30 minutes or less. Don't be one of the 8 million people in the UK suffering in almost silence. Get back to what you love doing. Xroid. Be kind to your behind. For free advice on hemorrhoids, text KIND to 81156.
As he turned the corner, it hit him. A smell so sweet, orchestral masterpieces could be composed about it. But what could it be? He had to find out. So with his nose leading the way, he wandered towards the paradise. He turned a corner and stopped. What lay before him was the most beautiful sight he could ever have imagined. A new bakery. And to think, he'd never have come across it had he taken the car. Walk, cycle, discover. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Smouldering, slinky, seductive, streamlined, spellbinding. Ever notice how some of the most alluring descriptions seem to begin with the letter S? So perhaps it's no coincidence that S-Line, Audi's most stylish trim, does too. Take the A3 Sportback S-Line. With its added standout, there's another one, details, it's pure Audi. Just even more sporty, stealthy, sleek, striking, swish, sublime, sultry, swoony. The supremely stylish Audi A3 Sportback S-Line. Test drive yours at West London Audi, or search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. We have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
War. Italian stocks and bonds gain as Matteo Salvini begins a push for new elections.
Flights have been canceled in Hong Kong after another weekend of violent protests. Plus, an autopsy has been performed on financier Jeffrey Epstein. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The Mets' 8-game winning streak came to an end with a loss to Washington. Yankees a 1-0 win at Toronto.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm John Tucker. Bloomberg Daybreak being brought to you by Inovalon, a leading provider of cloud-based platforms empowering data-driven healthcare for insurance companies, physicians, pharmacy, and pharmaceutical companies. Inovalon, data has a story to tell. Inovalon gives it a voice.
U.S. futures and global stocks are heading lower to start this week. It is 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 13.5 points. That's a drop of nearly 0.5%. Dow futures down 129 points. NASDAQ futures down almost 38. The DAX in Germany up 0.1%, while the CAC in Paris is down 0.1%. The FTSE in London down 0.2%. The Nikkei in Japan is closed today. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong closed down 0.4%. The 10-year up 18.30 seconds. The yield 1.68%. 2-year yield 1.58, almost 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.6%, down 86 cents, $53.64 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.4%, up $6.20, 15.1460 to the troy ounce. The euro 1.1176 against the dollar, and the yen 105.22. John.
Well, let's begin with the latest on the trade war. Chinese authorities are holding back from major stimulus, keeping options open as the impasse risks turning into a currency war. For the third straight day, Beijing said its daily fixing for the yuan stronger than estimates. And at the same time, the International Monetary Fund is calling on China to keep its exchange rate flexible. Let's get more from Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie in Beijing.
The IMF report seems to support the Chinese position, and it's been played up very heavily in state media here over the last few days. So that's the Chinese stance on it. The IMF have come out with a report that they see as broadly supportive. What we saw in terms of the fixing, which is a slightly stronger fixing than the markets had expected today, building the case that China's looking to kind of gradually depreciate the currency. No big shocks, because of course they don't want to see capital flight, and they don't want to see any broader risks to the financial markets.
This all comes after President Trump said trade talks with China planned for September could be called off, and that he's, quote, not ready to make a deal.
Now, stocks in China are higher while the yen is stronger as investors start the week on a cautious note. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with more on the trading day in Asia. Juliet, good morning.
Good morning, Nathan. The yuan edged higher along with equities on the Chinese mainland as the PBOC set the currency's reference rate weaker for an eighth session. Stocks in Hong Kong fluctuated and Cathay Pacific shares fell the most in 3 years to a decade low as protests in the city entered a 10th week. Australian stocks fell along with iron ore futures, with mining players and gold stocks under pressure. And the Kiwi paired earlier gains as the country's Treasury Department identified New Zealand could weather negative interest rates to the tune of minus 0.35% in a crisis. In Singapore, I'm Juliet Saleh, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Juliet, thanks. It could be a rough day for traders in Argentina. The country's euro bonds are tumbling after President Mauricio Macri lost a key primary vote in a landslide. Let's get more from Bloomberg's Justin Carrigan.
The opposition candidate Alberto Fernandez has completely taken the pollsters and potentially the markets by surprise by winning a much greater than expected margin in this primary election, such that if this were reflected in the October 27 election, then he would automatically become president and there would be no need for a runoff.
That decisive victory has investors worried Argentina could return to policies that include currency and capital controls, as opposed to Macri's more market-friendly positions. Bloomberg's Garfield Reynolds has details.
There was an expectation that Macri would do significantly better, not that he would win the primary, but that he would do well enough to be in a position to challenge strongly at the October election. That's been completely blown away, and so we're seeing concern about what will happen once Argentinian assets start trading. We have some commentators out there who are saying once the Argentinian peso begins trading, it could drop as much as 25%.
The peso begins trading in the U.S. session after finishing last week at 45.31 per dollar.
Stocks and bonds in Italy are gaining after Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini pulled the plug on the coalition government and called for a swift election. Now, Salvini's on the campaign trail in southern Italy. Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo is there.
Salvini is in full campaign mode. He wants to present himself as a man of the people. Of course, he wants this election to take place quickly. I spoke to him at the beach. He told me hopefully we get an election in October. And then he also said investors have nothing to worry from a Salvini government. There is no secret plan to leave the euro. We are not going to leave the euro.
An exit from Europe or the euro is out of the question and not being discussed. What we are discussing about, find wrong, and want to change are rules on immigration and taxes. There is absolutely no plan to exit Europe or the euro.
Matteo Salvini doubled down on this idea that he wants to cut taxes for everyone, get tough on migration, no leaving the euro, however. And it's interesting, he's decided to come here to the south of Italy because this is an area where the Northern League, as it was formerly known, would not do well in the elections. But of course, Salvini is looking to change that and actually get more votes. He is polling right now at 40%.
Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo reports Salvini will spend the rest of this month stumping for votes, and the prospect of fresh elections in Italy is weighing on the euro, currently trading down 0.2% against the dollar at 1.1174.
And on the corporate front, Saudi Aramco is reporting first-half results for the first time. The state-owned oil company posted a 12% decline in profit as crude prices fell and costs increased. Aramco is also continuing its push into Asian oil refining, announcing an agreement to buy a 20% stake in Reliance Industries. It's valued at $75 billion. This is Bloomberg. Andy, it is now 5:07 on Wall Street. Let's get news from around the world this morning. And we say good morning to Bloomberg's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, John. Flights have been canceled in Hong Kong for the rest of the day. It comes as police are increasingly clashing with demonstrators after the 10th straight weekend of anti-government protests. Bloomberg's Karen Lee is in Hong Kong.
Fight for freedom! Violent scenes erupted across Hong Kong as authorities used more aggressive tactics on protesters during the movement's 10th weekend. Riot police were videotaped beating demonstrators and deploying tear gas in subway stations, while other officers went undercover to infiltrate crowds and make arrests. The unrest is impacting the economy and daily life in one of the world's most densely crowded cities. Karen Lee, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Officials have performed an autopsy on Jeffrey Epstein, who was accused of sexually abusing underage girls. However, the details on how Epstein died in jail have yet to be released. Epstein was found unresponsive in his Manhattan jail cell after an apparent suicide attempt. Epstein's death cut short a criminal prosecution that could have pulled back the curtain on the inner workings of the financier. Bruce Market, an attorney for Epstein's former cellmate, tells ABC this was negligence by the correction system.
What the guards do and what they're supposed to do are almost always two different things. So one has to wonder how it is that this man who just tried to take his own life by hanging himself a few weeks ago was in a position to successfully hang himself.
Prosecutors say they will continue to investigate. Pennsylvania authorities say a daycare center where children could stay overnight as their parents worked was ravaged by a fire that killed 5 and sent the owner to the hospital in Erie. Some residents in Newark are being told to drink bottled water after dangerous levels of lead were found in some neighborhoods. The Environmental Protection Agency says people in homes with old lead pipes should avoid tap water. Newark Mayor Raz Baraka says tests on at least 2 of the water filters distributed to homes showed they did not work.
The results of this test leaves us with many questions, and we must expand our testing to understand what is happening with these 2 specific filters.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael, thank you. Coming up on 510 of Wall Street, and it's time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. And here's John Stashower.
John, the Mets won 7 in a row, couldn't get the win streak to 8. Then they won 8 in a row, couldn't make it 9. A fielding miscue on what would have been the final out of the first inning, played in 3 Washington runs. Mets rallied to tie, but the ex-Met Asdrubal Cabrera untied the game with a 2-run hit in the 7th inning. Victor Robles then a 2-run homer off the still struggling Edwin Diaz, and the Nationals won 7-4. Still, only 2 losses in 17 games, an amazing 2 weeks for Pete Alonso and the Mets.
We were on an 8-game win streak. It was really special, and to come off that, and we just came off a loss, and I think it was Pittsburgh, and we haven't lost since Pittsburgh. So I mean it's pretty damn good.
Right in the mix for a wild card playoff spot. Mets off tonight in Atlanta tomorrow. Yankees back home today. Day-night doubleheader with the Orioles, who actually beat the Astros yesterday, the day after they lost to Houston 23-2. The Yanks have dominated Baltimore this season, and they got a split of the 4-game series in Toronto, winning 1-0. Masahiro Tanaka was outstanding. His catcher was Austin Romine.
He's just on. I think he used his fastball really well to keep him off his off speed. He threw some good splitters down and got some ground balls, and I think his slider, back foot and back door was on. When he's got all his pitches working, I mean, those are the kind of outings that we get from him.
Other than the Red Sox, Tanaka is great. 2 starts against Boston. He's allowed 18 runs in 4 innings. American Patrick Reed took the lead late from the Spaniard John Rahm. Reed won the Northern Trust Golf in Jersey City by 1 shot. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. John?
All right, John, thanks a lot. Well, as the NFL and NFL Players Association negotiate a new contract, a new organization is looking for running backs to sever ties with the Players Association and form their own union. The International Brotherhood of Professional Running Backs has filed a petition with the Federal Labor Board saying runners have unique career structures and the current one-size-fits-all union is inappropriate. Move comes as 2 of the league's best running backs hold out from camp in hopes of improving their contracts. You're listening to Bloomberg.
All money managers might seem the same, but while some give their clients cookie-cutter portfolios, Fisher Investments tailors portfolios to your goals and needs. Some only call when they have something to sell. Fisher calls regularly, so you stay informed. And while some advisors are happy to earn commissions whether you do well or not, Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when you do better. In other words, we're on your side. Maybe that's why most of our clients come from other money managers. So if you're in or nearing retirement, talk with us and find out why investors are switching to and staying with Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments. Clearly better money management. Investments in securities involve the risk of loss. Visit us at FisherInvestments.com to find out what we can do for you.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here.
Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
At Romans, you can rent your next home from just £36, plus your first month's rent. No deposit.
No problem.
Romans, your trusted local property experts at romans.co.uk. Conditions and monthly fee apply.
Hemorrhoids. You talk to your GP, but you don't really get anywhere because the NHS has limited surgery for hemorrhoids, so you go on suffering in silence. Okay, maybe not so silent. It's time to speak to Xroid. They specialise in a new, fast, safe and effective procedure for hemorrhoids with no downtime, and the procedure takes just 30 minutes or less. Don't be one of the 8 million people in the UK suffering in almost silence. Get back to what you love doing. Xroid. Be kind to your behind. For free advice on hemorrhoids, text KIND to 81156.